the different sectors, allow the governors then to first talk about their value chains before then we hear the response from the private sector, because I thought we were still at the opening remarks. If you'll allow me, I will ask Governor Susan to talk about pyrethrum, and then I will ask Governor Wanga to do cotton, and maybe mention something on edible oils. And then after that, Governor Cicely was also to input on edible oils, mostly, I think, from the nuts, macadamia, and also the...
we might need some affirmative action.
Sorry, Your Excellency. For once, Your Excellency, the shoe is on the other foot. I hadn't actually even realized, but they're the ones who volunteered, but you'll be happy to know that we have Governor of Wajir. Ahmed will talk about leather, representing mostly the ASAL counties, though we know that the leather industry is not just from that side. Governor Badilisha also has told me that they used to produce pyrethrum, and there are certain interventions that they would require. So that for the first round, if we can do that, and then Governor Lusaka will also come in after that. So if we may request that you do 1 minute each, and then we can move then back to the private sector. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for this opportunity. And for me, really quickly, pyrethrum is also something that together with Your Excellency, we have been very passionate about. And the reason for that, without going into numbers, because I'm sure you've seen them, and I like to pride myself or pride Nakuru as the home of pyrethrum, you can imagine that a few years ago, my numbers, by the way, were saying 80% globally. They used to get that from Kenya, but I've seen from, I'm sure your numbers are better, it's 90%. And now we are only at 2%. So you can see the level of opportunity that's in there. But also I'm glad to see that in the last couple of years, we've woken up to the reality that we really can do well. From being out there with the farmers, I know initially we sort of as a country perhaps mismanaged a bit the bit about payment to farmers, and that is what made many of the farmers stop doing pyrethrum. And some of them challenged me and they told me, you know, if we plant potatoes and we don't get a market to sell them, I can feed the potatoes to my children. But on the other hand, if I plant pyrethrum and nobody buys the pyrethrum, kind of can't eat it, yeah? So that was sort of the logic, and they moved away from that. But from where we are, Your Excellency, we actually have a very good block of counties. Beginning with myself, we have West Pokot, we have Elgeyo Marakwet, Laikipia, Meru, Nyandarua, Kericho, Bomet, Trans Nzoia, and Uasin Gishu. Oh, Nyamira, sorry, I'm sorry, plus Nyamira. So together, we are forming a really good block there, and I want to say it here, and I believe Brian and Dave are in here from Kentegra, who have been very helpful in bringing farmers on board to continue or to agree actually to plant pyrethrum, and we've been out there together on the ground. And from those farmers who have been able to do it, really, Your Excellency, you can see the difference. We went out there, we would measure it, they get some receipts and they pay them within a week or two. And the farmers were telling me you can even use now the bursary money you used to give us to do roads, because with those receipts, the principals in the schools accept their kids, and when they are paid, they pay. So it's a big deal, and it's coming along. We are pushing it. From the CS, Moses Kuria here, we've had a lot of discussions. And from our pyrethrum producing counties, all we ask is you join with us as we are doing with the KIPs, get us some money so that we can get some money for farmers. Myself plus the other governors, what we have done on our part is add money in our budgets for the seedlings, because a big part of the challenges has been that our farmers don't have the seedlings or the good seedlings. I use Kentegra a lot, for example, because I've worked quite a bit with them and I've seen the kind of extension services they are giving to the farmers, which is really critical because they need to sort of understand the best practices. So inadequate funding has also been a big deal, post-harvest losses. Pricing has been poor, but now with quite a bit of players in this market, we are doing well. We are doing quite well, diseases and pests, and the poor infrastructure, which we are working on. But to combat that, we are, like I said, putting in our budgets money to help the farmers, which together, hopefully, the national government will help us a bit, and together we can get this moving. And we have quite a few players as well from the, like I said, the pyrethrum processing company of Kenya, Kentegra, Africam, botanicals, all green and all that. In addition to the seedlings, we are also providing in partnership with the stakeholders, some of these are partners here, we are providing modern dryers for this pyrethrum for the farmers, which is also going a long way in their being able to get good pricing for their pyrethrum with, I'm finalizing now, I can see you're moving. So we are working very hard on this value chain, and in addition to that, as a county, we are bringing or mobilizing the farmers together so we can form cooperatives for better bargaining power, and as well as pyrethrum growers associations and that sort of stuff. So that is where we are. I wouldn't take much longer than that, but I'm glad our numbers are going up, and I promise you, Your Excellency, that we are going to really run with this and get us back to where we used to be. Thank you.
Governor Wanga. Would you like to come in front, please?
One more there. You can use whatever. Hello, Gladys.
Thank you, Excellency. Let me thank you for leading all of us to leave NATO, which is not the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but no action, talk only. And so we are very happy that we've now moved with the KIPES. And when this came up in Naivasha, Your Excellency, we said this is what we've been, you met us where we were going in terms of getting our industrial parks together. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Now, speaking about cotton and the cotton value chain, I think what we need, as you said correctly, is the correct seeds. In Homa Bay, for example, we've now, using the NARIG money under the World Bank, mobilized farmers in their cooperatives and supported them. But now, we've now registered over 12,000 farmers with about 15,000 acres of land. If you calculate how much seeds we need about 22,500 kilos of seeds. And we had already talked to our farmers about BT cotton. But now it's become very difficult to access the seed. I'm glad that the ministry next week will be coming to Homa Bay with 3,500 kilos of seed. So you can see the gap is still very large. And if you look at the yield, if we had BT cotton, 22,500 tons, we'd be able to produce at least 22,500 tons of cotton at the end of the day, and be able to support Rivertex, which only needs 56,000 tons for the year. So the seed question is big. And what we said, Your Excellency, when we met with the minister was, the national government doesn't have to give it all. If we can acquire it, and we have a G2G, so that counties we can also put in, because this is our lifeline as well, so that counties we can also put in money to buy the seeds. But we need to know where to buy the seeds, because you know, if seeds don't grow, it's an impeachment question. Sas can tell you, you know? Isn't it, Sas? You can be impeached if you give seeds that don't grow. So that's a very important question there. So if we can get it from government, we'll know it will be certified seeds that if we give will grow. And of course now following that will be the issue of pesticides and just farmer education going forward. And then there's the issue of gening. And I think the private sector brought it out. When Homa Bay farmers grow seeds, they are gened in Salawa, in Baringo. So now, you know, seeing is believing. We know we are faith people. Faith is, you know, believing in things hoped for, but people want to see. If I know this is my ginery, I will take it there. So I think the issue of ginery is big. I want to leave that at that. And then speak briefly about edible oils. Your Excellency, I know you've spoken about Busia and we are working there, but do you know that 80% of Kenya's Lake Victoria is in Homa Bay? The other 4 counties share 20%. So when it comes to palm oil, last week, together with the private sector, we were in Uganda. We saw what they've done in terms of growing palm oil. Your Excellency, I haven't slept since I came from Uganda because I'm thinking, where am I going to get the land to put together farmers? Because you can't get 100,000 acres of land or 50,000 that is out there. So it's to talk to farmers and to owners of land to ask them how we can come together in cooperatives and grow the palm oil so that we can move. So that is a very, if you saw what happened, if I saw what I saw in Uganda, surely there is no reason at all why the entire lake basin cannot be growing the palm oil. And same to sunflowers and so on, Your Excellency. And finally, energy must be part of this discussion. The energy ministry must be part of the conversation. Because every investor, now we have industrial parks, every investor is asking, what about power? And there are people, for example, who want to come and invest in solar farms, you know, and so on and so forth. But you know the queue. When I was chair of the finance committee, there was a big queue of people looking for PPAs, over 200-300 people. So how do we deal with the issue of power? Thank you, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, you can see why I started with the ladies. My Vice Chair, Governor Wajir, and then we'll go to Governor Sicily. Mudomi and then Sicily, and then Governor Bungoma.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency, the President, and all protocols observed. Your Excellency, I think the eloquence with which you share your frustration might be what convinces everybody to accept everything you're saying. I was so convinced about this housing thing. I wish the parliamentarians were also here. Your Excellency, I think we also share the same frustration because we've been saying the same thing. My name is Ahmed Abdullahi, Governor of Wajir, Vice Chair of Council. We've been saying the same thing in all our counties. I first started getting into the political space, not contesting but supporting someone in 2002. And every time presidential aspirants came to Wajir, they have talked of exporting meat to the Middle East. So I've told my people, we either do that these 5 years, or we don't talk about it ever. So those are some of the things. Now, with respect to leather, I wish I knew that we could make more money from the skins than from the meat. We've just come out of a drought situation, and we've lost, you know, quite some livestock. We could have lost even more had it not been for the interventions of national and county governments. The boreholes and the borehole coverage that we've had has actually helped reduce the amount of livestock we've lost, but we've still lost a lot of livestock. And they die with the meat and with the skins and everything. So this leather business is something that we want to take very, very seriously. In a number of counties up in the north, because we keep being reminded that we have the third largest herd in Africa, a lot of that herd is sitting in Asals, in arid and semi-arid counties. And I also saw that the gentleman who was presenting, when he was talking about the hides and skins, he didn't include camel hide. Right? And I'm sure that could be quite useful as well. So there's all these abattoirs that were started in these northern counties that are half complete. Some have the structures complete but not equipped. And a lot of them also have factored in some tannery in them. So probably we need to then have a conversation with Moses and his team to see how best to complete this. And we don't mind giving them to the private sector, actually, because government is not very good in running business. We can agree that you come, and I would want to encourage the private sector to come out into these arid counties, so that you're not taking your money only to the usual suspects. The risk versus return, probably there's better return if you take bigger risks. Come out to our counties, see what there is. There's a lot of value chains. Everything that has been said here, including cotton, can also happen up in the north. There are pictures I sent to Your Excellency the other night of farms in Wajir. We have sensitized people about farming so much that now we don't know how to cope with it. We can't deal with the land management issue because everybody is fencing off land to farm. We don't have sufficient storage. Every other day, my CC sends me pictures of onions and millets, farms. We just don't know even how to deal with it now. We don't have the cold storage in place. So from one end of the continuum of producing nothing, we might go to the other end. We might have the glut that Ukambani had a few years back with green grams. So for this leather, and there's a lot more that can be done. We are, sold to this idea, and we're willing to work with those in the private sector to come and invest in this sector. And there's a lot of hides and skins that people just waste. We use it as sleeping mats. Sometimes we throw it on top of our thatched houses as roofing. So if we can show that there's money, definitely it's something that we're willing to sensitize our people on. And we also will endeavor to complete this abattoirs. My sister has spoken about electricity. It's a challenge in the far-flung areas. Your Excellency, this week, 3 times, my people threatened to ban the KPLC gensets, the diesel generator gensets, because we have had electricity rationing in Wajir Wajir town, for the last 5 years. For the last 5 years. And the generator sets that came, I think some weeks back, both of them failed because they're old generators. So electricity is a problem. I went to India some time back, about 2 months back, to a place called Ahmedabad. And by local law, every house must have solar panels on its roof. And they generate electricity, which goes back into the grid. So if what you produce in your house is more than what you consume, you actually make money from the grid. And we're wasting all that sun up in the north. So probably we also need to look at how to force Ketraco to take its transmission lines to Mandera, and together force everyone to have solar panels on their rooftops to generate enough electricity and make it cheaper for these producers. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a brilliant idea on energy, Governor Muthoni.
And as you come in, Governor Muthoni, respectfully, I'd like to remind us about time. So if you can just make your remarks short so we can continue the conversation, and hear as well from the private sector who will have questions for you. And I'm sure you also have questions for the private sector to engage you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You know, politicians, sometimes when they see the microphone, we tend to speak longer, even when it's not necessary. But I'll keep it very short. When I was waking up to speak, and Anne said, Governor Muthoni, Korea asked whether there's any manufacturing in pulses. And Your Excellency, we do not have to have real manufacturing to add value. In this country, we have a lot of counties that are producing pulses that are going to the market and fetching the wrong value just because our farmers are not organized. And me, I'll just talk about 2 things. I'll talk about the power of numbers in between our counties, because now we are going to have 47 mini centers for value addition. And if you're not careful, everybody needs to be stuck with their own small numbers. And that is why we must have a conversation between ourselves. in what we can be able to do within our individual counties, coordinating or collaborating with the neighboring counties. I'll give a very good example. I've been having a conversation between Governor Ann, Governor Barire, and the Meru County about what we produce. There is no value in having tannery in Tharaka-Nithi, having another one in Embu, another one in Meru, and that each one of us has small manufacturing with cost. And that is why we've agreed that SES can bring me the hides and the skins. Same with Anna Igoro, because she doesn't have a lot of animals, because she does a lot of rice. And we have now manufacturing that is based on numbers. And lastly, if that makes sense, of course, to most other counties, it is going to be duplicated all over, so that we can be able to have the value of the numbers in having synergy in one production. Your Excellency, you gave me a call the other day and gave me instructions, which I took very seriously. You're not aware that when you called me about the green grams, our people had gone slow on production because of the same problem that Governor of Kitui is experiencing of the prices. So what we did an emergency and we bought certified seeds. And the production at the moment is so high, not just in Tharaka-Nithi, in Kitui, and even in Embu, because the rains were good. And now there's an outcry, because we already announced to them the government is going to take over through the National Trading Corporation and buy the same. So we need to be also alert and be very timely in what we promise our farmers, like Susan was putting it. Because every time we have our production with the promise of the farmers that we can be able to deliver the market and we don't, then it's a problem during the next production. A farmer has no business producing what they more than what they can consume if all of it go to waste. But I'm happy I'm speaking to the people who are involved in manufacturing, in value addition, which is Kenya, which is KEPSA, and we're in the right market. So again, as I finish, kindly, Mr. Skuria, let us see what we can do with the Kenya National Trading Corporation. Because right now, those places are no-go zone for us as a government, when the people are walking around with half prices of what they were fetching before, because of our production. Thank you very much.
I think we will cede the space now to the private sector so that the conversation goes on the other side, and if there's another round of questions, then the governors who haven't spoken the opportunity to contribute and also respond to the private sector questions.
Thank you, Chair. As we begin this conversation, what we did, Your Excellency, we didn't invite all the sectors. So the associations that you see here today and some of the private sector leaders are the ones around this conversation. So there are many others. So you'll see ASNET here, you'll see Chamber here, you'll see professionals here, you'll see SME here, you see KAM here, but there are many others who are not here. But let me recognize the chair of KEPSA, who is here with us. And the other chairs who are also in a part of this conversation, and the companies. But as we begin this conversation, I think the opportunities are very clear. The challenge we've had is on the competitiveness. Your Excellency, remember when we were doing the ease of doing business, we did so well, from 189 in 2014 to 56 by 2020. You know, and we worked very closely. I think you're the one even who launched that conversation with World Bank and ourselves in 2014. But the challenge that has remained is on competitiveness. If you look at our imports, they've continued to increase while our exports remain constant. And that's what we need to change with these value chains. And the areas that I think are a problem for us on competitiveness are cost of raw materials. And so it's music to my ears when I hear Her Excellency Gladys Wanga talk about what to do with edible oils. Kalangala Island in Uganda is a must visit for anyone who is thinking of what we can really do with palm oils in this country. Then logistics is the other area that I think we have dropped. Productivity and finance. Utilities has been mentioned, energy has been mentioned, but I think something else that we forget is water. We've had great rains, but I think a lot of it is ending in the Indian Ocean. And in a couple of months, we will not have it again. And the water will become a challenge. So those are some of the areas that are really affecting us. So as I ask for interventions, let me ask the chair of KM, Rajan Shah, to actually make the first intervention in 2 minutes on this issue of competitiveness and where the shoe is pinching us as private sector so that we address it in this conversation.
Your Excellency, all protocols observed. Your Excellency, 8 months ago, we were in the same room, I believe, nearly 8 months ago, and you gave us a big challenge. We were at 7.3% of GDP as manufacturing, and the challenge you gave us was that we need to reach to 20% by 2030. And we were extremely excited. And you gave us a lot of energy. And we came out looking very optimistic. When I heard you speak today, I could still feel the same energy, Your Excellency. However, as a manufacturing sector, if we fast forward from that time to now, 8 months, there is pessimism. There is pessimism, yet there is hope. There's also hope for the future. So I just want to kind of highlight, as Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and I will, Your Excellency, also touch on housing levy, housing fund. I can assure you as CAM, we are not against it, but let me leave that to the last. So Your Excellency, when you get challenged us with that, and that 20 by 30, we went and sat as a board and looked at what are the main 4 pillars which is going to drive this. And the 4 pillars we came out with was global competitiveness, export-led growth, agriculture for industry, and SME development. And I'm going to touch on probably 3 of them today in a way. Early this week, I also had the opportunity to listen to you at the Africa Continental Free Trade, the summit, the Africa Investment Summit. And I saw the passion with which you talked about Africa Continental Free Trade and how we need to open up Africa, how we need to open up to a trade within Africa, which is right now at about 15%, and we need to go much higher like what many other trading blocs are going. However, Your Excellency, to do that, we need to be globally competitive. We no longer can talk about just our local competitiveness. And we have been doing a lot of soul searching at CAM to see where this global competitiveness is going to come from. I'm going to raise 2 particular areas of concern. Today is not a day that we are complaining, but why we feel that global competitiveness is eroding for manufacturers in Kenya. And I'll give a couple of examples. And I'll relate to our current finance bill. We have introduced a levy, the Export and Investment Promotion Levy. We fully understand the rationale behind why the levy has been put in. Yet, we feel that this is a kind of a tariff which is going to hurt manufacturing. And let me just kind of quickly give you the genesis of how industrialization in Kenya has happened. When industrialization started post-independence, we could only get into conversion industries. Industries downstream where we are converting certain intermediate products into finished products. And over the last 3 to 4 decades, we have gotten strong in that sector of the industry. Now, the time has come for us to backward integrate into doing primary production so that the primary producers can also supply to these converters. And for sure, as CAM, we support that whole value addition process. However, we need to still keep whatever we have grown in the last 3-4 decades, because these industries in the conversion have also become competitive and are also exporting. And if we increase their raw material cost, which is their raw material cost, it's going to become uncompetitive for them and it will erode their competitiveness. Yet, at the same time, we can find ways how we can ensure the primary producers who are making huge investments can still be supported to become competitive so that they are also, and I'll give you examples of the steel, cement industry. We're talking about the clinker, the industry that we were together, Your Excellency, when we opened the plant of Devki in Samburu, making billets, one of the first of the kind. And we have to be highly applaud investors who are coming with those huge investments. However, how do we work with them and have more targeted interventions to be able to make them globally competitive so that they can not only have to just sell in Kenya, but they can sell in the whole of the rest of Africa. And towards that end, we are happy to work together to be able to support that, rather than to bring in levies which is going to hurt the entire industry and will also erode our global competitiveness. So, Your Excellency, that was one area. The second one, which is not connected to the finance bill, is our other big factor of production, which is wages. We understand how we need to create employment. We need to, definitely we have a big job. We are talking about 5 million youth that need to be employed. And to do that, we need to think a little bit differently. We need to look at our labor laws. We need to change with times, Your Excellency. The world is changing where now there are mothers who want to work from home. There are also mothers who only want to work part-time. And yet our laws are inflexible and do not allow those kind of working methodologies. And more importantly, Your Excellency, we need to bring productivity-based pay. By doing productivity-based pay, we are going to probably put more money in the pockets of our employees than how we are doing right now. We are also going to become more globally competitive through productivity-based. And as the private sector, we are willing to work with the government to find solutions around that. I want to touch on one more thing. I'm sorry I'm taking a bit of time. Kenya Association of Manufacturers has also on the pillar of agriculture for industry. I was so glad to hear today the governors talking here about how they want to kind of add in this whole value chain. We just started this initiative last month. And Your Excellency, what we are doing, 1/3 of our membership is made up of the food and beverage sector. Their raw material is the food crops which are being produced in each of these counties. We are calling them sector by sector. There are 34 value chains we are looking at. And we are looking at their demand and how they need their demand, what varieties of the raw material they need, what price they can pay, and what consistency of supply. And now we want to work backwards. And I already spoke with Governor Waiguru that we want to work with all the counties and see how we can link together. We are also working with banks to see how we can organize our producers to be able to kind of finance the production. So I'm very excited. In fact, I personally am in the value chain of pulses as well, all grains. I was sad to hear from 2 of our governors they cannot sell their pulses. And yet, the problem I have as a manufacturer, I can't get enough of it. And I paid the highest price last year, and still I could not get enough. So, Your Excellency, there is a disconnect. And as private sector, we need to see how to connect the dots here. Lastly, Your Excellency, around the housing levy, I can assure you that as CAM, we are not against the whole concept. In fact, the whole concept of saving is something, the culture of saving is something very important. This is what Singapore did at a saving culture of 45%. That is how they grew their economy. And I think the saving culture is extremely important. Where, Your Excellency, and I will honestly be candid, where private sector, when they interrogated this, we felt that there were questions being asked. We have seen in the past various other projects which have sometimes gone to waste or issues of governance of the funds. And these were questions being asked by our private sector. We also want to, our own members are hurting right now in business. So they are saying, can we afford it right now or can we go progressively? So Your Excellency, I can assure you, we are not against. We can sit, we can talk, and we can find solutions, and we can progressively build this so that we can also prove the concept and at the same time work together, because no one can be a better beneficiary than the manufacturing sector through all the construction material. Thank you, sir, and let's keep on engaging.
Thank you very much. Allow me to call the CEO of Kenya Chamber of Commerce, Patrick Nyongesa. You've heard what the counties are doing, and I think your intervention will be on the competitiveness with the counties, and you have county chambers.
Thank you so much, Carol, the CEO of KEPSA. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, and also my patron for Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and all the dignitaries and fellow private sector team. Good evening. I want to be very practical in my discussion this afternoon. Your Excellency, we must really appreciate you for moving us from the NGO. I'm not talking of non-governmental organization, but I'm talking of nothing going on to something going on. It is true, I've been listening from the remarks of His Excellency, the remarks of the governors and industry players. We need to be where we want to be as Kenyans. So, Your Excellency, I would talk about how do we be where we want to be. For us to be very competitive, we must think of supporting SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. Small and medium enterprises, Your Excellency, I know your government has put a lot of policy measures, especially supporting the youth and women, but this is not enough until private sectors come in. How comes that our product cannot meet the desired specifications of the global and regional markets? One, we must work with the SMEs on product development for exports. We must come up with policies that, Your Excellency, would ensure that value addition is very critical. Just like China, you don't export or you don't sell your products in raw form. Your Excellency, if we can join you in your appetite, especially when you started, I was part of the team who witnessed the launch of the value-add tea to Ghana. And I saw Ghana last week, they were here. If we can have that policy that if you grow your products, then you don't sell it raw form, you must do value-add. Today we are talking of this integration of these value chains. If we don't focus on value addition, we'll be wasting a lot of airtime here, and even wasting the time for His Excellency, the President. You would have used this opportunity to do better things. Another thing is research. Your Excellency, we cannot remain competitive if we don't invest in research. And this is not a preserve function for the national government only or county government. Private sector, we must come hand in hand. When we talk of quality seeds, for example, on these value chains, we are talking about textile, cotton, leather, and even pyrethrum. Why must we import seeds? Kenyans are educated. Let's spend in research and produce our own seeds. My governor Wanga has just talked about you will be impeached if you don't give quality seeds. Let's have every county to have a research center to provide certified seeds. Government can come with that policy. Another thing, Your Excellency, you know extension services died in this country at the county. Our farmers are at the mercy of the traditional practices. We must go back to the drawing board and invest in extension services across the counties. Let our extension services support the small-scale farmers so that the small-scale farmers would be able to enhance on productivity. And to enhance on productivity, we must also really work together, both private sector and government, to really support and protect the local farmers. So that the middlemen in this country, Your Excellency in absentia, and I'm happy that my minister is here, small-scale farmers never get the desired profit from their produce because of the middlemen. My CS, this is something which we must work together to ensure that we really improve and support small-scale farmers. Another thing which we must improve on is contract farming. Contract farming is very, very key.
We have a
1 minute more.
Okay.
Our bigger brother, Ken CCI, because the other person also had more minutes. Just give me 2 minutes. We must see on how to work on market access and diversification. As Chamber of Commerce, governors who are here, we want to work closely with you so that we support the SMEs to diversify, especially when it comes to production. A lot of discussion have been put forward, especially on, to address on post-harvest losses. And our cold storage facilities needs to really be, we need to invest in cold storage facilities in every county. I would tell you the value chains we are talking about, if we don't address post-harvest losses, then we will not make the desired outcome to create jobs and also put money at the hands of the farmers. Lastly, Your Excellencies and the dignitaries who are present, we need to really enhance and promote intra- and inter-county trade. Why must you import products which other county, who is just your neighbor, is able to produce? This is something which would enhance productivity, it would enhance innovativeness, it would enhance creativity, and lastly, let's make farming to be youth-driven. We must change the attitude of our youth and the women so that they see agriculture as a commercial entity. I want to thank you and offer my unconditional support to work with you to champion all these value chains in all the counties. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In the interest of time, as we had said earlier, we want to have a conversation. This is a discussion between the private sector and government at national level and at county level. And we, of course, are very grateful that we have the governors here. We have the president who's talked about the big picture, and he's here also to respond to some questions. I think, Caro, can you talk about the specific value chains? We have heard of the investment in the pyrethrum sector of cotton, in the cotton industry, of the leather industry as well. Players who are in this sector and who have issues that they'd like to ask of the president or the governors that it need to be addressed so that, like the president said, it's not about talk anymore, it's about getting things done. What is it that the private sector needs to see or to leave out of this room with today that they can actualize this vision going forward?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me call just Betty on cotton and textiles. Please, a minute and a half, just the asks on this sector, especially because you're saying that our issues are competitiveness, is not the opportunities.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, thank you for this audience. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I think the message that was coming out loud and clear from all the presentations so far was global competitiveness. And if we are not globally competitive, we will not be able to export, we will not be able to grow our industry. And in one word, I think what they were all saying is either we are world class or we are no class. Hakuna kitu ya katikati. So we have to be world class. And that involves our logistics, involves our transport, involves utilities, it involves finance, all sorts of drivers of competitiveness. Your Excellency, you also mentioned that the textile value chain generated $544 million of export to the US last year, and of which 70% of it went to China. primarily. So we imported our raw materials from China. So out of $544 million, $300 million we actually sent back. That is not what we want to do. We want to keep all 544 million. And I remember 8 months ago when we were in this room, we talked about that is 0.5% of US imports. How can we change that? How can we make it 2% of US import? How can we make it 5% of US import? And I think at that point we did commit to you by 2025 we can give you 2% of US imports, which is $2 billion, and 5% by 2030, which is $5 billion. Direct jobs in that sector would be 200,000 jobs by 25 and 500,000 jobs by 2030. So yes, the textile value chain that you've picked is definitely a low-hanging fruit. It's definitely easily attainable because we are all making world-class product already, and it's a labor-intensive industry, and what we're looking for is jobs. And with that backward integration from the field to the fashion, which is what we're talking about today, from the cotton fields that all the governors will help us grow, to fire up our mills, so we can retain that entire value. Right now, Kenya is sitting at a very pretty place, and a very pretty place meaning the global geopolitics that is driving business between the US and China, and it's an open secret. I think if we play our cards right, we could actually be alternative supply chain out of China to the US, but made in Kenya. So we also did mention that there was, and I did talk about a small story last time, about one company that actually transformed Bangladesh to $42 billion. I'm happy to report today, sir, on Tuesday that company will be coming here to meet you for 2 days to see if they can replicate what they did in Chittagong, and so that we can create those jobs in Naivasha. I was trying to brief my governor earlier on. They will be here in Naivasha, and we will, the governor and myself will host them before we bring them to you, and hope that we can transform Kenya to the way you want us to do. Asanteni sana. God bless.
Thank you, Jazz.
Thank you very much. Automotive, Moses Nderito, maybe you can just say, where do you need intervention for us to get to the electric cars, to the electric motorcycles in a minute or two? And as you come, I'll have 2 more quickly, and then I'll turn it over back to the governors. I'll have leather, PVS Rao, and I'll also have housing. And first we'll stop from there before we move to the rest.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Your Excellency. I am here representing electric mobility. And yesterday we were very excited when we heard your speech at the 60th Madaraka Day. What are we looking for? We are looking for what KAM said. In 2008, President Kibaki gave an enabling environment for 2-wheelers. So electric mobility is divided into 4. 2-wheelers, bicycles, 2- and 3-wheelers, motorcycles and tuk-tuks, 4-wheelers, which includes vehicles, buses, and commercial vehicles, and charging infrastructure. A little incentive from the government for us to manufacture here locally. There's already 35 companies that actually in startup phase have invested over $50 million, and we are looking to push that to be able to actually increase that and actually manufacture here locally, using the value chains already been created. But on top of that, we will be able to support all the other value chains we've had. Those extension officers can use electric bicycles and electric motorcycles. We can do last mile delivery of all those, of the pharmaceuticals, the leather, even in the housing, we can use electric motorcycles, we can use electric vehicles, and even be able to use electric buses to deliver those people to the actual places of work. So for us, we're just looking for a small incentive on the manufacturing side and on the lithium-ion batteries. Currently, lithium-ion batteries attract duty if they're for transport. But if they're for solar, they actually have no duty. If we then were able to have a level playing field, exactly what solar had, exactly what Boda Boda had 8 years ago, I can tell you we will give you an excellent area for investment and also employing a lot of people. And this is an area that is predominantly youth. I am the oldest person in that industry. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much, Moses. straight to the point, what you need. Thank you. Let's have Rao, Leather. I know Leather has been spoken a lot. The Vice Chair of COG is right here, talked a lot about it. What do you really need to move it to the next level?
Your Excellency, all protocols observed. My name is Rao. I am representing the leather sector, which is one of the pillars. I think, by His Excellency, he's preaching about leather since 2018. And we are very fortunate because the beauty about leather, which no other sector has got in Kenya, is we have raw materials, huge raw material base. We have excellent manpower, and we have a beautiful market among East African countries and Africa and export. Your Excellency, just give you points. You always told us how to think big. We started thinking big in the leather sector. And we have made a lot of, forward, movements since you have taken over. And dear audience, in the last 41 years of my life in leather sector in Kenya, I have never attended 7 meetings related to the leather under one president in 6 months. This is the first time in the history. So we thank you for that. You always say, what do you want from me and what you can give, what we give as a private sector. I have only 2 things, Your Excellency, that our raw material quality until 2016 was excellent because the slaughterhouses, there was a proper management and it was under national government. Since the devolution has happened, we had a challenge on the slaughterhouses management of flaying and so on, so on, so on. I'm very fortunate that we have, on the invitation of His Excellency, the Governor of Shambu,